Billionaire visits his mother. 11 years after Phaeton freezes at what he sees, Andrew Sterling couldn't stop trembling as he gripped the steering wheel of his high-end sedan. 11 years had passed since he last set foot on that dirt road leading to the house where he grew up. 11 years since he left there swearing he'd never return. That's when he saw the faded sign, "Welcome to Pine Creek, 1 in 200 residents." His heart raced. In his sweaty hands, the red flowers he'd bought in the neighboring town felt like they weighed a ton. He had rehearsed 1,000 times what he would say to Margaret, his mother, but now that he was there, the words slipped from his mind like water through his fingers. The last conversation they had still echoed in his ears like a nightmare. He was only 22, full of dreams and ambitions, when she shouted for the last time, "You are no longer my son. Go chase your rich life and forget you have a family." Back then, Andrew had just landed a job opportunity in New York City. It was just a simple position at a tech company, but for him, it represented a chance to leave that place where he saw no future. Margaret, however, couldn't understand why her son wanted to abandon his hometown, his family, everything he knew. "Mom, I have to try," he had said, suitcase already in hand. "If I stay here, I'll just be another guy who can't even support his family properly." "And what do you think I am?" she replied, eyes full of tears. "I raised you and your siblings alone after your father left us. There was never a lack of food on the table, never a lack of love. But it seems that means nothing to you." Andrew tried to explain that it wasn't like that he only wanted a better life for all of them. But Margaret was too hurt to listen. The argument escalated to the point where she said those words that changed everything between them. Now, 11 years later, Andrew was no longer the young dreamer who left Pine Creek. He was the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the United States, had assets worth more than $2 billion, houses in 3 different countries, and was considered one of the most influential businessmen in the country. But none of that mattered at that moment. What mattered was that 3 days ago, he had received a call from Father Thomas, the same priest who had baptized him as a child. "Andrew, my son, I need to talk to you," the priest said, his voice heavy with concern. "It's about your mother." Andrew's heart had sunk in his chest. Margaret was sick, very sick. The town doctor had said she needed special care, but she was refusing to leave Pine Creek to seek treatment in the big city. "She won't accept help from anyone," the priest explained. "She's getting weaker every day, but she insists she doesn't need anything. Andrew, I know you two had problems in the past, but she's your mother, and mothers never stop loving their children, even when they're hurt." During those 3 days, Andrew couldn't think of anything else. He cancelled important meetings, put million-dollar contracts on hold, and made a decision that surprised even his closest advisors. He would go home. His car inched along the potholed road. Pine Creek looked exactly as he remembered. Simple brick houses, a few small shops on the main street, children playing barefoot in the yards. Time seemed to have stood still there. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When he finally stopped in front of the house where he grew up, Andrew felt as if an invisible hand were squeezing his chest. The simple brick structure was even more run down than he remembered. The paint on the walls had faded, some roof tiles were loose, and the small garden that his mother had cared for so deeply looked neglected. It was then that he saw a scene that made him freeze completely. Through the front door, he could make out a middle-aged woman taking care of someone in a wheelchair. He approached slowly, legs trembling, until he could see better. The woman was Sarah, his older sister, who had always been closer to their mother. And in the wheelchair was Margaret, his mother, whom he remembered as a strong, independent woman, capable of carrying bags of cement and working in the fields for hours on end, was there, fragile, dependent on help, even to eat. Andrew stood outside for a few minutes, fighting back the tears that kept threatening to fall. The flowers in his hands trembled along with his fingers. How had he let things get to this point? How had he stayed away for so long? Sarah was the first to notice his presence. When she looked back and saw him, her eyes widened in surprise, then filled with a mix of relief and anger. "Andrew," she whispered, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The sound of her voice seemed to wake Margaret from a doze. She slowly turned her head toward the door, and when her eyes met her son's, time seemed to stand still. Mother and son stared at each other in silence for long seconds. Andrew saw that she was much thinner, her hair completely grey, and deep wrinkles marking her face. But her eyes were the same, those expressive brown eyes that he had inherited. "Mom," was all he could manage to say. Margaret did not answer immediately. Her expression changed several times, as if she were fighting an internal battle between the relief of seeing her son and the hurt she had carried for so long. "What are you doing here?" she finally asked, her voice weaker than Andrew remembered. "I heard you were sick," he replied, taking a few steps toward her. "I came to see how you're doing." "Came to see how I'm doing?" Margaret repeated, in a tone that Andrew couldn't decipher as either sarcasm or sadness. "After 11 years, you show up here because you heard I'm sick." Sarah stepped between them, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the air. "Andrew, you should have let us know you were coming," she said. "Mom isn't well enough for visitors." "Not well enough for visitors," Margaret repeated, now with more firmness in her voice. "Sarah, your brother isn't a visitor, at least he shouldn't be." Andrew moved closer, now able to see his mother's condition better. She was visibly weaker, with trembling hands and slightly uneven breathing. Still, her eyes had that stubborn spark he knew so well. "Mum, I brought you flowers," he said, holding out the bouquet. "They're red roses. Your favorites." Margaret looked at the flowers for a moment, then at her son. "My favorites were daisies," she gently corrected. "Red roses were your grandmother Beatrice's favorites." Andrew felt a pang in his heart, more proof of how far he had drifted from his family. He couldn't even remember the flowers his mother liked. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I forgot." "You forgot a lot of things, Andrew," Margaret said, but her tone was no longer hostile. There was a deep sadness in those words. Sarah broke the awkward silence. "Why don't you come in?" she suggested. "It's hot out here." Andrew hesitated, waiting for his mother's confirmation. Margaret watched him for a few seconds before nodding. "Come in," she said simply. The house was exactly as Andrew remembered it, only everything seemed smaller and more worn. The same wooden table in the kitchen, the same chintz curtains, the same sofa that he and his siblings used to fight over on Sundays to watch TV. But there was something different, medical equipment scattered around the room. An oxygen tank, medications arranged on a tray, a shower chair in the hallway. Sarah helped Margaret get more comfortable in the wheelchair and went to make some coffee, leaving mother and son alone for the first time in over a decade. "You look very different," Margaret observed, sizing up her son from head to toe. "Thinner, more serious, and that suit must have cost more than I make in a year." Andrew looked down at his own suit, which had indeed cost a small fortune. "Things have changed, Mom," he said, not knowing how to explain his current life. "Changed for you," she corrected. "Here, everything is still the same struggles, the same people fighting to get by." They fell silent again. Andrew looked around, noticing small details he hadn't seen before. On the walls, there were still family photos, including some of him as a child. One in particular caught his eye, him, Sarah, and his younger brother David, from the last Christmas they spent together. "Do you remember that photo?" Margaret asked, following his gaze. "I do," Andrew replied. "David had just gotten that red bike." "He cried so much that day when you said you were leaving," Margaret revealed. "He waited for months for you to come back and teach him how to ride it properly." Guilt hit Andrew like a punch to the stomach. "And him? How is David?" he asked. "Married, has 2 kids," Margaret replied. "He works at Mr. Arthur Henderson's farm. Makes little, but at least he stayed close to family." The indirect criticism did not go unnoticed. "Mom, I know you're hurt with me," Andrew began, "and you have every right to be, but I needed to try something different with my life." "Something different," she repeated. "Andrew, I never told you not to try anything. I just never understood why you had to go so far away, why you had to cut all ties with us." "I didn't cut all ties," he protested weakly. "No? Margaret stared at him. When was the last time you called? When was the last time you asked how we were? I found out about your success from the newspapers, Andrew. From the newspapers. My own son became a billionaire, and I found out by reading a magazine at the neighbor's house. Andrew lowered his head. She was right, and he knew it. I was scared, he finally confessed. Scared of what? Scared that you would judge me. Scared that you'd think I was getting above myself. Scared that things had changed so much, there was no place for me here anymore. Margaret was silent for a long moment, processing her son's words. Do you think I would raise you only to judge you for trying to be successful? She finally asked. I don't know, Andrew admitted. Back when we fought, you said so many things. I was angry, Margaret interrupted. I was scared of losing you, and I ended up doing exactly what I was afraid of. Sarah returned with the coffee and found them in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Coffee's ready, she announced, trying to lighten the mood. Andrew, do you still like your coffee strong like before? I still do, he answered, forcing a smile. As they drank their coffee, Sarah began to talk about the last few years. David had indeed married and had kids. He worked hard, but he was happy. She herself had divorced a few years ago and moved back in with her mother to take care of her. When Mum got sick, I didn't think twice, Sarah explained. Family is family, you know. The phrase hit Andrew hard. While he was building a business empire, his sister had given up her own life to care for their sick mother. What kind of illness is it? He asked, addressing both Sarah and Margaret. Heart problems, Sarah replied, and her diabetes is out of control. The local doctor said she needs more specialized treatment, but Mom won't even hear of leaving Pine Creek. Why won't you get proper treatment, Mom? Andrew asked. And where am I going to find the money for that expensive treatment? Margaret answered. Besides, I'm not going to die in some strange place, far from everything I know. Mom, I can pay for the treatment, Andrew said without hesitation. I can pay for the best treatment there is. Margaret looked at him with an expression that mixed surprise and distrust. And why would you do that? Because you're my mother, he replied simply. 11 years ago you said you didn't need a mother, she shot back. Andrew remembered the conversation. Actually, he had said he didn't need her controlling his life, but in the heat of the moment, the words came out much harsher. I never said I didn't need you, he corrected. I said I needed to make my own choices. Same thing, Margaret muttered. Sarah decided to intervene before the conversation turned sour again. Andrew, let me show you something, she said, getting up. She went to an old piece of furniture in the living room and came back with a shoebox. Inside were dozens of newspaper and magazine clippings. Look here, Sarah said, showing the papers. Mom kept every piece of news about you she found. Every time your name appeared in the paper, she cut it out and saved it. Andrew picked up some of the clippings. There were articles about his first company, about the awards he had received, about mergers and acquisitions. In some, his picture showed him smiling alongside other businessmen. You kept all this? He asked Margaret. She looked away, clearly embarrassed at being found out. It was just to know if you were okay, she murmured. A mother always wants to know if her child is okay. The tears Andrew had been holding back since he arrived finally streamed down his face. Mum, forgive me, he said, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Forgive me for staying away so long. Forgive me for not calling, for not asking how you were doing. I was wrong. Margaret looked at him for a long moment before reaching out and touching her son's face. You were so small when you were born, she said softly. You fit in the palm of my hand. I promised myself I would do everything to make you happy, even if that meant letting you go. I wasn't happy, Mum, Andrew confessed. I was successful, but I wasn't happy. All these years I missed you every day. Then why didn't you come back sooner? She asked. Pride, he admitted. Foolish pride. Margaret ran her hand through her son's hair, like she used to when he was a child. Pride is a very expensive thing, my son, she said. Sometimes it costs more than it's worth paying. At that moment, the front door opened and David walked in, clearly coming from work, his clothes dirty with soil. Sarah, I brought those medicines that—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Andrew. The two brothers stared at each other. David was taller and stronger than Andrew remembered, his face sunburned and his hands calloused from hard work. "Andrew?" he said, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Hey, David," Andrew replied, standing up. David dropped the bag he was holding and walked toward his brother. For a moment, Andrew thought he would be scolded, but David surprised him with a strong hug. "Man, you look so different," David said, pulling back to get a better look at his brother. "You look like you stepped out of a magazine." "You've changed too," Andrew observed. "You turned into a giant." "It's the farm work," David laughed. "No gym can replace carrying feed sacks all day long." Despite the relaxed tone, Andrew noticed a certain tension in the way David spoke. It wasn't hostility, but there was a distance that hadn't been there before. "David, I heard you got married, had kids," Andrew said. "Congratulations." "Thanks," David replied. "Want to meet them?" "Sure," Andrew nodded. "They're at home with their mother," David explained. "Maybe later you can stop by." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us beginners a lot. Now, continuing, the conversation flowed strangely between the brothers. There was affection, but also a palpable discomfort. David seemed unsure how to act around his billionaire brother, and Andrew didn't know how to connect with someone who had changed so much. "David, tell me about your life all these years," Andrew asked. "The normal life of someone who stayed," David replied, without malice, but with a hint of irony. "I worked from an early age to help at home, studied as much as I could, found a job, married Jennifer, had the boys." "And are you happy?" Andrew asked. David thought about the question before answering. "I'm happy with what I have," he finally said. "I don't have much, but I have my family, my job, my community. It's a simple life, but it's mine." Andrew detected indirect criticism again. It seemed everyone there saw him as someone who had abandoned family values for money. "David, I know you must think I turned my back on you all," Andrew began. "It's not that I think," David interrupted. "It's that that's what happened. Andrew, when you left here, we didn't even have money to buy Mum's medicine. You knew that. Even so, you never sent a single dollar to help." The comment caught Andrew off guard. He had convinced himself the family was angry at him for emotional reasons, but David was talking about something much more practical. "I thought you all didn't want my help." He defended himself weakly. "When did we ever say that?" David asked, now visibly irritated. "When Mom had to sell Grandmother Beatrice Sterling's jewelry to pay the hospital bills, do you think she wouldn't have accepted help if you'd offered?" Andrew felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Margaret had sold her mother's jewelry. Those jewels were the only valuable things the family owned, loaded with memories and history. "Mom, did you sell Grandmother's jewelry?" he asked, looking at Margaret. "I had to sell them," she replied simply. "It was either that or not be able to pay for the treatment when I had my first heart attack." "When did you have your first one?" Andrew asked, alarmed. 5 years ago, Sarah answered. "She almost—" "Well, it was very serious." Andrew noticed Sarah had changed her sentence midway. She was probably going to say their mother almost died. "And I didn't know any of it," he murmured to himself. "How would you know?" David asked. "You disappeared from our lives. You didn't have our phone number, didn't know our address, didn't know anything about us anymore." "I could have found out," Andrew admitted. "I could have looked for you all." "You could have," David agreed. "But you didn't." The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew was starting to understand the real magnitude of what had happened. It wasn't just about resentment over him leaving. It was about abandonment, plain and simple. He had simply vanished from their lives when they needed support the most. "David, I want to make up for it," Andrew finally said. "I want to help the family. I want to take care of Mom. I want to—" Want, David interrupted him. "You always wanted a lot of things, Andrew. The problem is you only want them when it's convenient for you." "That's not true," Andrew protested. "Isn't it?" David stood up, clearly agitated. You show up here after 11 years, on the day you find out Mom is sick, offering money as if that fixes everything. Where were you when she was home alone crying because her son had vanished? Where were you when she spent sleepless nights wondering if she'd done something wrong raising you? Margaret tried to intervene. "Oh, David, stop it," she said. "No, Mom," David continued. "He needs to hear this. Andrew, you have all the money in the world, but do you know how long Mom went without knowing if you were dead or alive? Do you know how many times she picked up the neighbor's phone hoping you would call? Do you know how many times she said she regretted your fight?" Each word from David was like a knife in Andrew's heart. He was beginning to understand that the pain he had caused went far beyond what he had imagined. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Of course you didn't know," David said, his voice cracking, "because you didn't want to know. You left and built your life as if we never existed." Sarah stepped between the brothers. "Guys, let's take it easy," she pleaded. "Arguing isn't going to solve anything." "You're right," David agreed, making a visible effort to control himself. "Sorry, Andrew. I didn't mean to dump it all on you at once, but it's years of accumulated resentment." Andrew looked at him with a mix of guilt and admiration. David had every right to be angry, yet he was still trying to be fair. "You don't have to apologize," Andrew said. "You're right about everything you said. I was a coward and a selfish person." "Don't say that," Margaret protested. "You were young. You wanted a better life. There's nothing wrong with that." "Yes, there is, Mom," Andrew insisted. "There's a lot wrong with abandoning your family. You gave me everything, raised me with love, and I just disappeared when I didn't need you anymore." "It wasn't exactly like that," Margaret said softly. "Yes, it was," Andrew insisted, "but I want to change that. I want to be part of the family again, if you'll let me." David looked at him skeptically. "And how do you intend to do that?" he asked. "Are you going to move here to Pine Creek, give up your billionaire life to come back to the countryside?" The question caught Andrew off guard. He hadn't thought about the practical details of what this reconciliation would look like. I don't know exactly how yet," he admitted, "but I know I want to try." "Trying isn't enough, Andrew," David said. "Family is commitment. It's being there during the hard times, not just showing up when you want to feel better about yourself." The accusation was harsh, but Andrew knew he deserved it. "You're right," he said, "but give me a chance to prove I've changed." "Changed?" David repeated. "Andrew, you've been here for an hour. How can you say you've changed?" "Because I'm here," Andrew replied. "Because when I found out you needed me, I dropped everything to come." "But for how long?" David insisted. "Tomorrow you go back to New York City, to your rich life, and we stay here waiting for the next visit for another 11 years. The question hit Andrew because he didn't have a convincing answer. His life really was in New York City. His company, his responsibilities, his commitments. "I don't know yet how I'll balance everything," he admitted honestly. "But I know I don't want to be away from you anymore." Margaret, who had stayed quiet through most of the argument between her sons, finally spoke up. "Boys, you're arguing about the future without dealing with the present," she said. "Andrew, do you really want to help with my treatment?" "Of course I do, Mom," he answered without hesitation. "Then let's sort that out first," she said pragmatically. "After that we can talk about the rest." Sarah agreed with her mother. "Mom's right," she said. "The most important thing now is to take care of her health." Andrew realized it was a relief for everyone to have a concrete and immediate goal. The emotional issues were too complex to be resolved in an afternoon, but taking care of Margaret's health was something tangible that could be done. "Tell me exactly what the problem is," he asked. Sarah explained that Margaret had heart failure and uncontrolled diabetes. The local doctor had done what he could, but she needed a specialist cardiologist and an endocrinologist. In addition, she needed some more complex tests that were only available in New York City. "How long does she need to be hospitalized?" Andrew asked. "The doctor said at least 2 weeks of hospitalization to stabilize her condition," Sarah replied. "After that, she'll need constant follow-up." Andrew did some mental calculations. It was a complicated situation, but nothing that couldn't be solved with organization and adequate resources. "All right," he said. "Let's do this. I'll hire the best private doctors. We'll go to New York, Do all the necessary tests and treatments. I already told you I don't want to leave here, Margaret protested. Mom, it's temporary, Andrew insisted, just until you get better. And if I don't get better? She asked. The question caught everyone by surprise. No one had openly talked about the possibility of Margaret not fully recovering. You will get better, Andrew said firmly. You'll have the best treatment there is. Andrew, not all the money in the world can guarantee that, Margaret said softly. I'm 72 years old, and my heart is very tired. Don't talk like that, he pleaded. Son, I need to talk like this, she insisted, because if something happens to me, you need to be prepared. David and Sarah exchanged worried looks. It was clear they had had this conversation before. Nothing is going to happen to you, Andrew said, but his voice didn't sound as convincing as he wanted. My son, I'm not afraid of what might happen to me, Margaret said. I'm afraid of the three of you being estranged after I'm no longer here. Family is all we truly have in life. Her words hit Andrew's heart like a punch. Margaret was more worried about the family's unity than about her own health. We're not going to be estranged, David promised. No, we're not, Sarah agreed. Andrew, Margaret looked directly at him. No, Mom, he said. We'll never be estranged again. Then prove it, she said. Prove that you can be true siblings again. Over the next few hours, the three siblings and Margaret talked about the details of the treatment. Andrew called his personal assistant and asked him to schedule appointments with the best doctors in New York City. He also asked to prepare a suite in one of the city's top-rated hospitals. David and Sarah were impressed by how easily Andrew solved issues that seemed impossible to them. With a few phone calls, he had organized an entire medical structure that would cost a fortune. It must be nice to have all that power, David commented, unable to hide a hint of envy. Actually, it's not as nice as it seems, Andrew replied, surprising his brother. You have power over many things, but you don't have control over what really matters. What do you mean? I can buy the best medical treatment in the world for Mom, Andrew explained. But I can't go back in time and stop you from going through hard times. I can't make those 11 years of distance never have existed. David seemed to reflect on his brother's words. At least you can do something now, he said, his tone a little softer. That's true, Andrew agreed. And that's what I intend to do. When the sun began to set, Andrew realized he needed to decide where he would stay. He hadn't thought about it when he left New York City so abruptly. Where will you sleep? Sarah asked, as if she had read his thoughts. I don't know, Andrew admitted. Is there a hotel around here? David laughed. A hotel in Pine Creek? Andrew, you really forgot what it's like here. There's Mrs. Gable's Inn, but I think she only has 2 rooms. You can stay in your usual room, Margaret suggested. It's still the same. The idea of sleeping in his childhood room left Andrew both emotional and nervous. Are you sure it won't be a bother? He asked. This is your home, Margaret said simply. Later, when Margaret was resting and Sarah had gone to her own room, Andrew and David were alone on the front porch of the house. It's strange having you here, David said, breaking the silence. It's strange for me too, Andrew admitted. You really got rich, didn't you? David asked curiously. I did, Andrew confirmed. What's it like having that much money? Andrew thought about the question. It was hard to explain to someone who had never experienced it. At first, it's exciting, he said. You can buy anything, go anywhere, do anything. But then it becomes a kind of prison. A prison how? You become a hostage to your own responsibilities, Andrew explained. There are thousands of employees depending on you, investors demanding results, decisions that affect a lot of people's lives. You stop living for yourself and start living to keep everything running. But you must have an interesting social life, right? David insisted. Parties, travel, beautiful women. Andrew smiled sadly. I do, he admitted. But you know what the problem is? I never know if people are with me because they like me or because they want something. And you never got married? I almost got married a few times, Andrew recounted. But I always ended up finding out they were more interested in my wealth than in me. It must be hard to trust anyone, David observed. It's very hard, Andrew agreed. That's why I valued family so much. You all were the only people who knew me before I had anything. And yet you drifted away from us, David pointed out. I know. Andrew sighed. It was the biggest mistake of my life. They were silent for a few minutes, watching the stars in the clear country sky. Andrew, I need to ask you something, David said finally. Go ahead. Do you really want to come back to our life? Or are you here just because you feel guilty? The question was direct and deserved an honest answer. At first, when I found out Mom was sick, I think it was just guilt, Andrew admitted. But after I got here, after I talked with you all, I realized how much I missed having a real family. What do you mean? In New York City, I have colleagues, business partners, employees, but I don't have anyone who truly cares about me, no one who truly knows me. Sometimes I go weeks without having a sincere conversation with anyone. David seemed surprised by the confession. I always imagined your life was more happy, he said. I imagined that too. Andrew laughed without humor. But financial success isn't the same as happiness. And what do you plan to do now? I'm still trying to figure that out, Andrew admitted. I know I want to be present in your lives, but I still don't know how to reconcile that with my professional responsibilities. Can't you just drop everything? David asked. It's not that simple, Andrew explained. My company employs over 10,000 people. If I leave irresponsibly, a lot of people could lose their jobs. I understand, David said, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. But I can rearrange things, Andrew continued. I can delegate more responsibilities, I can work remotely sometimes, I can come here more often. That would be good, David agreed. David, tell me something, Andrew asked. How do you manage to be happy with such a simple life? David laughed. You think my life is simple? He asked. Compared to mine, yes, Andrew replied. It might be simpler, but it's not easy, David explained. I wake up every day at 5 in the morning to work on the farm. I don't earn much, the bills are tight, there's always some problem to solve. But you know what makes me happy? What? At the end of the day, when I get home, my wife is waiting for me with a smile. My kids run to hug me. We have dinner together, talk about our day, watch a little TV together. It's simple, but it's real. Andrew felt a pang of envy for his brother. I don't have that, he admitted. When I get home, everything is empty and silent. Why did you never build a family? David asked. I always thought I had time, Andrew replied. I always thought I needed to establish my career first. Then I'd worry about relationships. And now? Now I realize I let life pass me by, Andrew said sadly. David put his hand on his brother's shoulder. There's still time, he said. You're only 33. Sometimes I feel 100. Andrew sighed. They talked late into the night. David told him about his wife and kids, about work on the farm, about the dreams he still had. Andrew talked about his company, about the challenges of managing such a big business, about the loneliness he felt even surrounded by people. When they finally went to sleep, Andrew headed to his old room. Sarah had changed the sheets, but everything was exactly as he remembered. The same twin bed, the same wooden wardrobe, the same schoolbooks on the shelf. On the wall, there were still some sports team posters and a few photos from when he was a teenager. It was as if time had stood still in that room. Andrew lay down on the small bed, much smaller than his king size in New York City, and stared at the ceiling. He could hear the sounds of the house, the living room clock ticking the hours, Sarah moving in the next room, Margaret's heavy breathing coming from the master bedroom. It was a strange feeling to be back in that place after so long. Part of him felt at home, as if he had never left, but another part felt out of place, like a stranger visiting a museum of his own childhood. Before falling asleep, Andrew made a decision. No matter what it cost, he was going to bring his family back into his life. And more than that, he was going to find a way to be part of their family too. The next morning, Andrew woke to the sound of voices in the kitchen. For a moment, he was confused, not remembering where he was. Then the memories of the previous day came flooding back. When he left the room, he found Sarah preparing breakfast and a woman he didn't know helping her. The stranger was young, pretty with long brown hair and a warm smile. "Good morning," she said when she saw him. "You must be Andrew. I'm Jennifer, David's wife." "Nice to meet you," Andrew replied, extending his hand. "The pleasure is mine," Jennifer said. "David has told me a lot about you." "I hope it was good things," Andrew joked. "It was a mix," she laughed. "But now that I've met you in person, I can form my own opinion." Jennifer's diplomatic answer made Andrew smile. It was clear that David had told her about the family problems, but she was trying to give her brother-in-law a chance. "Where are the kids?" Andrew asked. "At school," Jennifer replied. "But they're dying to meet their famous uncle." "Famous?" Andrew laughed. "David told them I'm famous?" "He said you're on TV and in magazines," Jennifer explained. "To kids, that means you're famous." Andrew wondered what the children expected to find, probably something very different from reality. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to hit like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us beginners. Now back to it. During breakfast, Margaret seemed more cheerful than the day before. Jennifer had brought some homemade treats that brightened the table, and the conversation flowed more naturally. "Mum, you need to get ready because we have a doctor's appointment today," Sarah reminded. "What appointment?" Margaret asked. "Andrew made an appointment with the doctors in New York City," Sarah explained. "Remember we talked about this yesterday?" "I said I don't want to go to New York City," Margaret protested. "Mum, it's just to run the tests," Andrew insisted. "You'll stay in a private room with all the comforts, and I'll be right by your side." "And who'll take care of the house?" she asked. "I will," Sarah offered. "And what about her work?" Margaret insisted. Andrew didn't know what work that was. Sarah noticed his confusion. "Mum sews for some people in town," she explained. "That's how she gets extra income." "A lot of people are counting on me," Margaret said. "Mrs. Higgins needs her daughter's dress for the wedding next week. Ms. Taylor ordered 3 skirts. Andrew realized his mother was using her work commitments as an excuse not to travel. In truth, she was scared. "Mum, are you afraid of what the doctors will say?" he asked directly. Margaret was silent for a moment before answering. "I am," she admitted. "Here in Pine Creek I can pretend I'm not that sick. But if I go to New York City and have all those tests, I'll have to face reality." "And what's wrong with facing reality?" Andrew asked softly. "The problem is that maybe the reality is that there's no hope left," Margaret said, her voice breaking. Jennifer came closer and took her mother-in-law's hand. "Mrs. Margaret, you can't think that way," she said. "My parents always said that where there's life, there's hope." "Besides," Sarah added, "if we don't try, we'll never know if there's hope or not." Andrew knelt beside his mother's chair. "Mum, I just came back into your life," he said. "You can't give up now." Margaret looked at him with teary eyes. "I'm not giving up," she said. "I'm just afraid of suffering even more." "Every medical treatment involves some suffering," Andrew said. "But it's worth it if the result is you getting better. And if it doesn't? Then at least we'll know we tried everything," Andrew replied. Margaret was thoughtful for a few moments. "All right," she said finally, "but you're all coming with me." "Of course," Sarah agreed immediately. "Me too?" David asked. "I have to work, and the kids have school." "The kids can stay with my mom for a few days," Jennifer suggested. "And work can wait. Family is more important." Andrew was moved to see how everyone was willing to make sacrifices for his mother. It was the kind of togetherness he had lost when he drifted away from his family. "I'll cover all the trip expenses," he said. "Transportation, lodging, food, everything." "That's not necessary," David protested. "Yes, it is," Andrew insisted. "You already do so much for Mom. At least let me help with this." Over the next few hours, they organized all the travel details. Andrew made a few more calls and managed to schedule all the exams for the next 3 days. He also booked rooms for the whole family in a hotel near the hospital. David went to pick up the kids from school so they could meet their uncle before the trip. When he returned, he brought 2 boys, Ryan, 8 years old, and Ethan, 6. The children were initially shy when they saw Andrew, but soon their natural curiosity took over. "Uncle, is it true you're rich?" Ryan asked directly. "Ryan," Jennifer scolded her son, It's not polite to ask that. It's okay, Andrew laughed. It's a fair question. Yes, Ryan, I have a lot of money. How much? Ethan asked, his eyes wide. Ethan, David called his son's attention. It's a lot of money, Andrew answered diplomatically. But you know what I've learned? Having money isn't as important as having family. Why? Ryan wanted to know. Because money can't give you a hug, tell a joke, or keep you company when you're sad, Andrew explained. But money can buy ice cream, Ethan observed, making everyone laugh. It sure can, Andrew agreed. How about we go get some ice cream now? The children got excited at the idea. Margaret said she was too tired to go out, so she stayed home resting while the rest of the family went to the ice cream parlor in the center of town. Pine Creek had only one ice cream parlor, a small, simple establishment that sold artisanal ice creams made by the owner himself, Mr. Jenkins. Andrew? Mr. Jenkins said when he saw them come in. My God, how you've changed. You look like you stepped out of a magazine. Hi, Mr. Jenkins, Andrew replied, surprised that the man still remembered him. How are you? Well, thank God, Mr. Jenkins answered. I heard you got rich and famous. What a pride for our town. Andrew felt embarrassed by the comment, but thanked him politely. The kids ordered ice cream, and he bought some for everyone, including the adults. While they were eating, Ryan and Ethan bombarded Andrew with questions about his life in New York City. They wanted to know what the tall buildings were like, if he had an expensive car, if he knew famous people. Andrew answered their questions patiently, but noticed he was being watched by other people in the parlor. Some whispered among themselves, clearly talking about him. Uncle, Ryan said quietly, why are those people staring at you? Because I'm different from them, Andrew answered honestly. Different how? I have more money, I dress differently, I live somewhere else, Andrew explained. Sometimes that makes people curious. They're saying you forgot about your family, Ethan said innocently. David and Jennifer were embarrassed by their son's comment. Ethan, don't repeat what adults say, Jennifer scolded. But is it true? Ryan asked Andrew. Did you forget about your family? The child's direct question caught Andrew off guard. He could have given an evasive answer, but decided to be honest. For a while I distanced myself from the family, he admitted. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Why did you make a mistake? Ethan wanted to know. Because I was young and thought I knew everything, Andrew explained. Sometimes adults make mistakes too. And now you won't make any more mistakes? Ryan asked. I'll try not to, Andrew promised. The children seemed satisfied with the answer and went back to focusing on their ice cream. When they left the parlor, Andrew noticed he had attracted some attention in town. Some people greeted him politely. Others just looked from a distance with curiosity. It must be strange to be famous, Jennifer commented. It's not exactly fame, Andrew said. It's more like being a curiosity, the local boy who got rich. And does it bother you? David asked. A little, Andrew admitted. Mainly because I know a lot of people must be judging me for staying away so long. And they are, David confirmed. But that'll pass. The people here are good, just curious. When they got home, they found Margaret asleep in the wheelchair. She looked more fragile than ever, and Andrew felt an even greater urgency to take her for treatment. She's been sleeping a lot lately, Sarah commented quietly. Is that normal for her condition? Andrew asked. The doctor said it is, Sarah replied. Her heart is working hard to keep her body going so she gets tired easily. Andrew looked at his sleeping mother and felt a tightness in his chest. She looked so small and vulnerable in that chair. It was hard to believe this was the same strong woman who had raised 3 kids almost on her own. Should we wake her for dinner? He asked. Better let her rest, Sarah said. When she wakes up, I'll heat up her food. During dinner, the kids dominated the conversation, telling stories from school and making plans for when they returned from New York City. Andrew noticed how close and affectionate the family was, something he didn't have in his executive life. Uncle, Ryan said as they were finishing dinner, are you going to live here now? Not exactly live, Andrew replied. But I'll visit much more often. Every week? Ethan asked hopefully. I don't know about every week, Andrew laughed. But way more than before. Before was never, Ryan observed shrewdly. That's true, Andrew agreed. So anything is way more than before. After dinner, while Jennifer was putting the kids to bed, Andrew, David, and Sarah stayed in the living room talking about the next day's trip. I'm still nervous about all this, David admitted. Why? Andrew asked. I don't know how I'll behave in New York City, David explained. I've never left Pine Creek. I don't know private hospitals, fancy hotels, that kind of stuff. You'll behave the way you always do, Andrew said, by being a good person and taking care of our mother. But what if I say something wrong? What if I feel out of place? David insisted. Andrew realized his brother was afraid of embarrassing himself. David, do you think I care about that? He asked. I don't know, David answered honestly. Then let me tell you something, Andrew said, putting his hand on his brother's shoulder. I've spent the last 11 years surrounded by people who know how to behave in any social situation, who wear the right clothes, say the right words, make all the appropriate gestures. And you know what those people have in common? What? None of them truly care about me, Andrew said. They know how to behave, but they don't know how to love. You may not know the social codes of New York City, but you know how to be a brother. And that's infinitely more important. David was moved by his brother's words. Thanks, he said. I needed to hear that. It's the truth, Andrew insisted. Sarah, who had been quiet during the conversation, finally spoke up. Andrew, can I ask you a question? She said. Sure. What changed? She asked. I mean, why did you decide to come back now? Andrew thought about the question. It was something he had asked himself several times. I think I finally realized I was living an empty life, he said. I have everything anyone could want materially, but I didn't have the people who really matter. And why did it take you so long to realize that? Sarah pressed. Because it's easy to fool yourself when you're busy all the time, Andrew explained. Work, meetings, travel, business. There's always something urgent to take care of. You keep putting off important things, thinking you'll have time later. And what made you stop to think? David asked. Father Thomas's call, Andrew replied. When he said Mom was sick, it was like someone turned on a light in a dark room. Suddenly I saw everything I was missing. Were you afraid to come back? Sarah wanted to know. Very afraid, Andrew admitted. I was afraid you wouldn't forgive me. I was afraid it was too late to fix things. And now? David asked. Are you still afraid? I have different fears now, Andrew said. Now, I'm afraid I won't be able to balance my professional life with my family life. I'm afraid of disappointing you again. You won't disappoint us, Sarah said with certainty. How can you be so sure? Because now you're here by choice, she explained. The other time, you were here because you were born here. It makes a difference. Sarah's observation was profound. Andrew truly was there by his own choice, not out of obligation or circumstance. Besides, David added, now you've already proven you can live without us. So if you're coming back, it's because you really want to. His siblings' words comforted Andrew. He had been so worried about what they would think of him that he hadn't considered they might also be happy about his return. Margaret woke up around 9 in the evening and had a little dinner before going to bed. Andrew helped Sarah take her to the bedroom and was struck by how weak his mother was. She could barely walk a few steps, even with support. Mom, are you feeling worse? He asked, worried. I'm a bit more tired today, she admitted. But I think it's because we're traveling tomorrow and I'm nervous. Do you want me to give you a sleeping pill? Sarah offered. No need, Margaret said. I'd rather talk a little with Andrew before I sleep. Sarah understood the hint and left, leaving mother and son alone. Sit here, Margaret asked, pointing to the edge of the bed. Andrew sat down and took his mother's hand. It was cold and trembling. Son, I need to tell you something, she said. What is it, Mum? If something happens to me during this treatment, I want you to know that I forgave you a long time ago. Mom, don't talk like that, Andrew pleaded. Let me finish, she insisted. I was hurt, yes, but I never stopped loving you. Mothers don't stop loving their children, even when they're upset with them. I know, Mom. You know now, she corrected. But you didn't know when you left. You left here thinking I didn't love you anymore. That's true, Andrew admitted. So I want you to know, I always loved you. I was always proud of you. I always rooted for your success, Margaret said, even during the moments I was most hurt with myself for letting you leave thinking otherwise. Andrew tried to hold back his tears but couldn't. Mom, forgive me for hurting you, he asked. There's nothing to forgive, she said, stroking his face. You were young, you had dreams, you wanted a better life. Any mother would understand that. But I was cruel, Andrew insisted. You were a scared young man who didn't know how to express his feelings properly, Margaret corrected. It happens to everyone. How are you so wise, Andrew asked, smiling through his tears. 72 years of life teach you a lot, she laughed. Mainly that holding a grudge only hurts the one holding it. I missed you so much, Andrew confessed. I missed you too, she said. But now you're here. And I'm going to stay here, Andrew promised. Don't promise things you can't keep, Margaret said softly. It's not an empty promise, Andrew insisted. It's a real commitment. Margaret studied him for a moment. I believe you, she said finally. Really? Exactly, because you could have sent money for my treatment and stayed in New York City. But you came personally, that means you really want to be here. Andrew was impressed by his mother's insight. She really was very wise. Mom, I have a question, he said. Go ahead. If I had come back sooner, would you have welcomed me? Margaret thought about the question. Always, she answered without hesitation. Maybe at first I might have been a little cold because mothers have pride too, but after 5 minutes, I would have been crying with joy. Then I wasted 11 years for nothing, Andrew concluded. It wasn't for nothing, Margaret said. You needed those 11 years to grow to become the man you are today. If you had come back earlier, you might still have been that stubborn boy who left here. Do you think I've changed that much? You're more mature, wiser, more humble, she observed. The Andrew who left here 11 years ago wouldn't have come to take care of me. He would have sent money and thought that was enough. His mother's assessment was spot on. Andrew truly wasn't the same person anymore. How can you understand me so well? He asked. Because I'm your mother, she replied simply. A mother knows her child better than the child knows himself. They talked until Margaret began to feel sleepy. Andrew helped her get more comfortable in bed and kissed her forehead before leaving. Good night, Mom, he said. Good night, my son, she replied. Thank you for coming back. The next morning, everyone woke up early for the trip to New York City. Andrew had rented a special van, adapted for a wheelchair which would take them to the city. Margaret was more cheerful than the day before. It seemed that her conversation with Andrew the previous night had eased some of her worries. Are you nervous, Mrs. Margaret? Jennifer asked while helping her mother-in-law get ready. A little, Margaret admitted. But I'm also curious. It's been over 20 years since I left Pine Creek. A lot has changed in the world, Andrew said. I can imagine, Margaret replied. You'll have to be patient with me if I'm amazed by all the new things. The trip to New York City took about 6 hours. Andrew had hired a private nurse to accompany them, ensuring Margaret was comfortable during the journey. Along the way, Ryan and Ethan got excited watching the landscape change. They had never left the region and everything was new. The bigger cities, the tall buildings, the heavy traffic. Uncle, is this where you live? Ryan asked when they reached the outskirts of New York City. This is it, Andrew confirmed. What do you think? It's so big, the boy observed, his eyes wide. And very noisy, Ethan added. Andrew laughed. He had become so accustomed to New York City that he had forgotten how impressive the city could be for someone from the countryside. When they finally arrived at the hospital, everyone was impressed with the facility. It was a modern building with well-kept gardens and elegant architecture. Oh my God, Margaret murmured. It's prettier than a lot of hotels. The rooms are even nicer, Andrew said. The private room Andrew had reserved for his mother was truly impressive. It had a view of a garden, comfortable furniture, a large-screen television, a private bathroom with a bathtub, and even a sofa bed for companions. Andrew, this must cost a fortune, David said, clearly uncomfortable. Don't worry about that, Andrew said. Mom deserves the best. She does, Sarah agreed. She took care of us her whole life. Now it's our turn to take care of her. Margaret was settled into the room, and soon the first doctor came to do an initial evaluation. Dr. Gregory Harrison was one of the most renowned cardiologists in the country, with over 30 years of experience. "Mrs. Margaret," he said, after reviewing the tests she had brought, "you do have a condition that needs special attention, but nothing that can't be treated." "Is it curable?" she asked directly. "A complete cure is difficult at your age." The doctor was honest. "But full control of symptoms and excellent quality of life, that is possible." "What needs to be done?" Andrew asked. "First, we'll run a full battery of tests to understand exactly what's going on," Dr. Harrison explained. "Then we'll adjust the medication and set up a treatment plan." "Will it hurt?" Margaret asked with a hint of fear in her voice. "Some tests are a little uncomfortable," the doctor admitted, "but nothing unbearable, and your family will always be nearby." Over the next 3 days, Margaret underwent every possible test: MRI, cardiac catheterization, stress tests, complete blood work, endocrinological evaluation for diabetes. Andrew was impressed by his mother's courage. Even though she was scared, she faced each test with determination. David and Sarah took turns being by her side, and Andrew coordinated everything with the doctors. On the 3rd day, Dr. Harrison called the whole family for a meeting and gave the final diagnosis. "Mrs. Margaret has moderate heart failure and uncontrolled type 2 diabetes," he explained. "These aren't simple conditions, but they are completely manageable with the right treatment." "What kind of treatment?" Sarah asked. "Specific heart medication, strict diabetes management, cardiac physiotherapy, nutritional monitoring," the doctor listed. "And very important, she needs regular medical follow-up." "How regular?" David wanted to know. "Ideally, a monthly checkup with the cardiologist and endocrinologist, and control tests every 3 months, Dr. Harrison replied. Andrew did the math in his head. It was a treatment that required constant presence in New York City, or some big city with adequate medical facilities. "And if she doesn't do the treatment," he asked, "her condition will progressively deteriorate." The doctor was blunt. "In a year or 2 it could become critical." "But with the treatment?" Margaret asked. "With the right treatment you can have many years of excellent quality of life," Dr. Harrison assured. After the doctor left, the family talked about the options. "Mom, you heard what the doctor said," Sarah said. "You need to do the treatment." "But how?" Margaret asked. "You heard him. I need a checkup every month in New York City." "We'll figure something out," David said. "How?" Margaret insisted. "You have your own lives, jobs, responsibilities." Andrew had been quiet during the discussion, thinking of a solution. Finally, he made a decision. "Mom, I have a proposal," he said. "What proposal?" "Come live with me in New York City," he suggested. Everyone went silent, surprised by the suggestion. "Andrew, I can't live in New York City," Margaret said. "I don't know anyone. I don't know anything. I'd feel lost." "You know me," Andrew argued, "and I'd take care of you." "And what about Sarah and David?" and she asked. "Would I be far from my other children?" "They can visit whenever they want," Andrew said. "I'll pay for the tickets." "It's not the same," Margaret said sadly. Andrew realized his mother was right. Taking her away from Pine Creek would be like tearing a tree out by the roots. "Then I have another idea," he said. "What? What if I moved to Pine Creek?" The suggestion caught everyone by surprise, including Andrew himself. He hadn't planned to say that, but the words came out naturally. "Andrew, you can't do this," David protested. "Your company, your life, it's all in New York City." "I can manage the company remotely," Andrew said, already shaping the idea in his mind. "With today's technology, I can work from anywhere." "But what about your meetings, your commitments?" Sarah asked. "I can travel to New York City when necessary," Andrew explained. "Once or twice a month at most." "And where would you live?" and Mrs. Margaret asked. "I can build a house," Andrew said, "or renovate the house we grew up in to make it more comfortable for all of us." The idea was taking shape in Andrew's mind as he spoke. It made sense. He could take care of his mother, be close to family, and still keep his company running. "Andrew, are you sure about this?" David asked. "This isn't a decision you should make on impulse." It's not impulse, Andrew said, realizing it really wasn't. It's something I've been thinking about since I got here. I don't want to live far from family anymore. But what about your social life, your friends? Sarah tried to argue. What friends? Andrew asked. In New York City, I don't have real friends. I have co-workers, acquaintances, people interested in my money. Here I have family. Mrs. Margaret looked at him with a mix of surprise and emotion. Son, would you do that for me? She asked. I'd do it for all of us, Andrew corrected. For myself, too, I need you all as much as you need me. You. But it's such a radical change, David insisted. The radical change I already made, Andrew said. That was when I left here 11 years ago. Now I'm just coming home. Mrs. Margaret began to cry. They were tears of emotion, relief, happiness. You'd really do that? She asked again. I've already decided, Andrew said firmly. I'll spend a few more days in New York City sorting out company matters, organizing to work remotely. Then I'll come back to Pine Creek. For good? Ryan asked, his eyes shining with excitement. For good, Andrew confirmed. Ethan clapped with joy, and even David and Sarah seemed moved by their brother's decision. Andrew, are you sure you won't regret it? Sarah asked. I'm sure I regret having stayed away so long, he replied. I won't make the same mistake twice. For the rest of the afternoon, they talked about the practical details of the move. Andrew would have to completely reorganize his work structure, hire people to represent him in New York City, and adapt the house in Pine Creek for his professional needs. It was an ambitious project, but he was determined to make it work. The next morning, before heading back to Pine Creek, Andrew took the family to see some tourist attractions in New York City. Mrs. Margaret was impressed by the tall buildings, the street traffic, the sheer number of people. How can you live in all this noise? She asked when they were in the city center. You get used to it, Andrew said. But now that I'm back in the countryside, I realize how stressful it really is. And you won't miss any of this? David asked. Andrew looked around. He saw imposing buildings, expensive cars, well-dressed people, luxurious storefronts. It was a world he had conquered through hard work. I'll miss some conveniences, he admitted, but I won't miss the coldness, the distance between people, the feeling of always chasing something. And what about work? Sarah asked. Do you like what you do? I do, Andrew confirmed. And I'll keep doing it. I'll just be doing it from a different place with a different perspective. During the drive back to Pine Creek, Andrew started making calls to organize the move. He spoke with his CFO, with the operations director, with his personal assistant. They were all surprised by the decision, but committed to helping with the transition. Mr. Sterling, said Kimberly, his assistant, are you sure you'll be able to manage everything remotely? I'm sure I'll try, he replied, and if it doesn't work, I'll adjust as needed. Do you want me to start looking for properties in the countryside? Kimberly offered. Actually, no, Andrew said. I'm going to renovate the family home. Start looking for architects specialized in renovation and expansion. When they arrived back in Pine Creek, Andrew felt a different sensation. For the first time, he wasn't visiting his hometown. He was coming home. How good it is to be back, Margaret sighed when they reached the house. It really is, Andrew agreed, and he realized he meant it. Over the following days, Andrew began putting his plans into action. He hired an architect from New York City to design the home renovation, installed high-speed internet, and set up a temporary office in the room where he had slept as a teenager. The news that he was moving permanently to Pine Creek spread quickly through town. Reactions were mixed. Some were happy, others suspicious, still others simply curious. Father Thomas was one of the first to visit him. Andrew, my son, the priest said, what a joy to know you're back to stay. Thank you, Father, Andrew replied. You were the one who made me come back with that phone call? I only planted a seed, Father Thomas said, but you were the one who decided to return. How is the community? Andrew asked. Has it changed much? The same difficulties as always, the priest sighed. Lack of work, the young people leave, many people in need. Maybe I can help with some things, Andrew suggested. How so? I'm still working out the details, Andrew said, but maybe I can create some job opportunities right here. The priest's eyes lit up. "That would be a blessing for our community," he said. Andrew began having ideas about how he could contribute to the development of Pine Creek, maybe a small factory or a vocational training center, or some agriculture-related project. But first, he needed to settle in and take care of his mother. Margaret was responding well to the new treatment. With the right medication and regular medical follow-up, she was already showing signs of improvement. She had more energy, could stay awake longer, and had even started sewing a little again. "How are you feeling, Mum?" Andrew asked one morning. "Better than I've felt in months," she replied. "It feels like I have more life in my body." "The doctor said that's normal," Andrew explained. "With the proper treatment, you should keep improving." "And all because of you," Margaret said, her eyes welling up. "It wasn't because of me," Andrew protested. "It was because of all of us. Sarah, who cared for you all these years, David, who was always there. You, who had the courage to go through with the treatment. But if you hadn't come back," she began. "But I did come back," Andrew interrupted, "and I'm not leaving again." A week after returning from New York City, Andrew received an unexpected visit. Kimberly, his personal assistant, had traveled from New York City to Pine Creek. "Kimberly," he said, surprised to see her at the door. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see how you're adapting," she said, "and to bring some important documents." Kimberly was an efficient woman in her 40s who had worked with Andrew for over 5 years. She knew every aspect of his professional and personal life. "Come in, please," Andrew invited her. "I want you to meet my family." Kimberly was introduced to everyone and was clearly impressed by the simplicity and warmth of the family. "Mr. Andrew," she said when they were alone, "may I speak frankly?" "Of course." "You seem like a different person," she observed. "Different? How?" "More relaxed, happier," Kimberly explained. "In recent years you always seemed tense, like you were carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Andrew thought about her observation. "I think I really am more relaxed," he agreed. "Being close to my family does me good." "And the business? How is working from here working out?" "Better than I expected," Andrew admitted. "Without the constant rush of New York City, I can focus better on important strategic issues." "The board of directors is concerned," Kimberly said carefully. "Concerned about what?" "About your absence. They think you should be more physically present at the company." Andrew had expected this resistance. "Kimberly, schedule a video conference meeting for tomorrow," he said. "I'll talk to all of them." "Yes, sir." "And Kimberly," Andrew called her as she was leaving. "Yes?" "Thank you for coming all the way here. I know it wasn't necessary." "Actually, it was." She smiled. "I needed to see if you were truly okay with this decision." "And what did you conclude?" "That you finally found your place in the world." The video conference meeting with the board of directors was tense. Some members openly questioned Andrew's ability to lead the company from a distance. "Andrew," said Mr. Brooks, the most senior director, "we understand your personal reasons, but we have responsibilities to the shareholders, and we'll continue to fulfill those responsibilities," Andrew replied firmly. "The company's results haven't changed since I've been here. It's still too early to assess the impact," Mr. Brooks insisted. "Then give me 3 months," Andrew proposed. "If in 3 months the results aren't satisfactory, we'll revisit the arrangement." After much debate, the board agreed to the proposal. Andrew would have 3 months to prove he could manage the company remotely. It was additional pressure, but he was confident it would work. Meanwhile, the home renovation project was advancing quickly. The architect had designed an expansion that included a modern office for Andrew, a more comfortable room for Margaret, and general improvements to the house's structure. "It's going to be beautiful," Sarah Sterling commented, looking at the renovation plans. "And very different," David Sterling observed. "Different, but still the same house we grew up in," Andrew said, "just more comfortable." During the construction, the whole family had to adapt to the noise and mess, but there was an excitement in the air, a sense of renewal that infected everyone. "Dad, when our house is ready, will Uncle Andrew live with us forever?" Ryan asked David. "Yes, he will," David answered. "Your uncle decided to come back home." "That's great," Ethan said. "Now we'll have a rich uncle." Everyone laughed at the child's innocence. "Ethan, having money isn't the most important thing," Jennifer explained to her son. "What's important is that now you'll get to spend more time with your uncle." "That's true," Ryan agreed, "and he can take us out for ice cream all the time." The simplicity of the children's wishes touched Andrew. To them, having their uncle close meant more outings, more stories, more affection. It was much more valuable than anything material. A month after returning definitively to Pine Creek, Andrew faced his first major professional challenge. One of the company's main clients was threatening to cancel a $1 million contract because he wanted to renegotiate in person with the CEO. "Mr. Andrew," said Kimberly during a call, "Mr. Walker is insisting on an in-person meeting. He says he doesn't close deals over video calls." "When does he want the meeting?" Andrew asked. "Tomorrow, if possible." Andrew looked around. He was on the house's porch, watching his nieces play in the yard while Margaret rested in the chair beside him. "Kimberly, schedule a day after tomorrow in New York City," he decided. "I'll travel tonight." "Are you sure, sir?" "I am," Andrew confirmed. Some business still needs to be done in person. When Andrew told the family he needed to travel, everyone understood. "Son, you don't have to sacrifice yourself for my sake," Margaret said. "It's not a sacrifice, Mom," Andrew replied. "It's just one day in New York City. I'll be back tomorrow night." "Are you sure you can juggle everything?" David asked. "I'm going to learn to juggle," Andrew said. "It's a matter of organization." The trip to New York City felt strange to Andrew. After a month in the countryside, the city seemed even more hectic and noisy than he remembered. His apartment, which he once considered cozy, now felt cold and impersonal. The meeting with the client was successful. Mr. Walker, an American businessman, was impressed by Andrew's willingness to travel specifically to meet him. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "I heard you moved to the countryside. Doesn't that affect your dedication to business?" "Actually, it's made me more efficient," Andrew replied. "With fewer distractions, I can focus better on what really matters." "Interesting." Mr. Walker seemed intrigued. "And are you happy with this change?" "Very happy," Andrew confirmed. "Sometimes you have to leave to find out where you truly belong." The contract was renewed for another 2 years, with even better terms than before. When Andrew returned to Pine Creek the following night, he felt a sense of relief as he saw the lights of the small town. It was truly good to be home. "How was the trip?" Margaret asked when he arrived. "Successful," Andrew replied. "But I can't wait to not have to travel so much anymore." "You'll manage," she said confidently. Over the following months, Andrew established a routine that worked well. He worked from home most of the week, traveled to New York City only when absolutely necessary, and dedicated full time to his family on weekends. The house renovation was completed, and the result exceeded all expectations. The original structure was preserved, but with modern comforts that significantly improved everyone's quality of life. Andrew's office turned out perfect, modern, functional, yet harmonious with the house's style. He had all the technology needed to work remotely, including a professional video conference room. Margaret was especially happy with her new room. It was larger, brighter, and had an adapted bathroom for her special needs. She also got a small workshop where she could sew more comfortably. "Andrew, how did you manage to imagine all this?" she asked when she saw the final result. "I thought about what each of you needed to be happy," he replied. "And you?" she asked. "Are you happy?" "Happier than I ever thought possible," Andrew answered honestly. The news of the Sterling family's transformation spread throughout Pine Creek. Many people came to visit, curious to see how the house had turned out, and to talk with Andrew. Some visits were sincere, from people who truly rejoiced in his return. Others were self-serving, from people hoping to gain some benefit from the presence of a billionaire in town. Andrew learned to distinguish one from the other and to deal with both diplomatically. One day he received a visit from Mr. Ethan, owner of the town's small furniture factory. "Andrew," said the man, visibly nervous, "can I talk to you?" "Of course, Mr. Ethan," Andrew replied. "What can I do for you?" "It's just, well, the factory isn't doing so well," Mr. Ethan explained. The competition from the big cities is killing our business. I'm sorry to hear that, Andrew said sincerely. I heard that you sometimes help companies, Mr. Ethan continued. Is there any way you could take a look at our situation? Andrew became thoughtful. He really had experience in corporate restructuring, and Mr. Ethan was an honest man who employed several families in town. How about I stop by the factory tomorrow? Andrew suggested. I can take a look and see if there's anything that can be improved. Mr. Ethan's eyes lit up. Really, you'd do that? Of course, Andrew confirmed. We're all from the same community. The next morning, Andrew visited the small furniture factory. It was a family business that had been operating for over 20 years, but was facing serious difficulties. The problem is, we can't compete on price with the big factories, Mr. Ethan explained. And we also can't innovate in designs because we don't have money to hire designers. Andrew analyzed the operation for a few hours. It was a solid company, with skilled employees and good quality products, but it needed modernization and market strategy. Mr. Ethan, Andrew said at the end of the visit, I have some ideas that might help. What ideas? First, you need to stop trying to compete on price, Andrew explained. You'll never win that battle. Instead, you need to compete on quality and exclusivity. How so? Handcrafted, custom-made furniture with unique designs, Andrew detailed. There's a growing market for that kind of product, especially in big cities. But we don't know how to do design. I can help with that, Andrew offered. I know some excellent designers who could work with you. Mr. Ethan was moved by the possibilities. And how much would that cost? He asked. For you, nothing, Andrew said. Consider it my contribution to the community. Over the following weeks, Andrew worked with Mr. Ethan to completely restructure the furniture factory. He hired a designer from New York City to create a line of exclusive products, invested in some new equipment, and helped develop a marketing strategy. The result was surprising. Within a few months, the factory was receiving orders from several towns in the region and even from New York City. Andrew, how can I thank you? Mr. Ethan asked when they received the first order of $1,000. You don't need to thank me, Andrew replied. Just keep employing people from here in town. The transformation of the furniture factory caught the attention of other local business owners. Soon, Andrew was being sought out by several small merchants and producers who wanted advice. Son, you're becoming the town's consultant, Margaret joked. Not a bad idea, Andrew laughed. Maybe I'll discover a new calling. Do you enjoy helping these people? She asked. I really do, Andrew admitted. It's different from running a large corporation. Here I see the direct result of my work on people's lives. And your company, how is it? Better than ever, Andrew answered. Last quarter's results were the best in history. It was true. With more focus and less stress, Andrew was making better, more strategic decisions. The company was growing steadily and sustainably. The board of directors, which had initially resisted the arrangement, was now convinced the change had been positive. Mr. Andrew, said Mr. Brooks during a video conference, I have to admit I was wrong. Your performance has improved significantly since you moved. Thank you, Mr. Brooks, Andrew replied. Sometimes you need to change your environment to give your best. 6 months after returning permanently to Pine Creek, Andrew took stock of his new life. He was working fewer hours but being more productive. He was earning the same money but spending much less. He was having much more time for his family and himself, and most importantly, he was genuinely happy. David, he said one night when the brothers were talking on the porch, thank you. For what? For forgiving me, Andrew explained. For giving me a second chance to be your brother. There's nothing to thank for, David said. Family is family. Still, thank you. They were silent for a few minutes, looking at the stars. Andrew, David said finally, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you regret anything? Anything you did in these past years? Andrew thought about the question. I regret having stayed away so long, he said, but I don't regret the path I took. If I hadn't left, I wouldn't have learned what I learned. I wouldn't have become the person I am today. And if you had to choose, David insisted, between having all that success or never having left here, Today I would choose never to have left, Andrew replied without hesitation, because I discovered that success without family is worthless. Even knowing it would be a harder life, even knowing, Andrew confirmed, financial hardship can be overcome. Emotional loneliness is much harder to cure. David was impressed by his brother's answer. You really have changed, he observed. People change when they need to, Andrew said. I needed to change so I wouldn't lose you all again. At the end of that year, Andrew organized a big Christmas party for the whole extended family. Distant relatives, longtime friends, dear neighbors, all were invited. The house, now expanded and renovated, was filled with people, laughter, music, and good food. It was exactly the kind of celebration Andrew hadn't experienced in years. Son, Margaret said, pulling him aside, I want to thank you. For what, Mom? For giving me the best Christmas present of my life, she said. What present? A united family, Margaret replied, her eyes shining with emotion. Andrew hugged her tight, feeling immense gratitude for being there, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. Thank you, Mom, he said. For what? For not giving up on me, Andrew explained. For keeping my picture on the wall all these years, for forgiving me even before I asked for forgiveness. That's what mothers do, Margaret said simply. That night, when the party ended and everyone left, Andrew sat alone on the porch, reflecting on the year that was ending. He had started the year as a lonely and successful billionaire. He was ending it as a happy billionaire surrounded by love. It was a transformation that all the money in the world could not buy. Margaret appeared on the porch, walking slowly with the help of a cane. Her health had improved dramatically with proper treatment and a loving family environment. Can't sleep, and she asked. Just thinking, Andrew replied. Thinking about what? About how life can change direction when you least expect it, he said. For better or worse? She asked, sitting down beside him. Definitely for the better, Andrew smiled. Do you have plans for next year? Margaret wanted to know. I have a few projects in mind, Andrew said. I'm thinking of creating a technical school here in town, so young people don't have to leave to study. That would be wonderful, Margaret said, excited. And I also want to expand the work I've been doing with the local small business owners, Andrew continued. Maybe create a formal economic development program for the region. You're turning into a true community leader, Margaret observed proudly. I'm trying to give back a little of what this town has given me, Andrew said. What do you think the town gave you? Roots, Andrew replied. An identity, a family, solid values. Those are things you can't buy or build from scratch. Margaret smiled, pleased with her son's answer. You know what makes me happiest? She said. What? Seeing that you've finally discovered who you really are, Margaret explained. All those years you were trying to be someone you weren't. Now you're simply Andrew. And who is Andrew? He asked, curious to hear his mother's perspective. He's a good man, intelligent, generous, who loves his family and wants to make a difference in the world, she said. The money and success are just consequences of who you are, not who you are. His mother's wisdom touched Andrew deeply. She had managed to define his identity in a way he himself had never been able to. How did you get so wise? He asked. 72 years of life, 3 children, many joys and many sorrows, Margaret replied. Life is the best teacher there is. And what's the most important lesson you've learned? That in the end only love matters, she said without hesitation. Everything else passes. Money, success, recognition, problems, hardships, it all passes, but love remains. Even when people do wrong things? Andrew asked, clearly referring to his own mistakes. Especially when they do wrong things, Margaret said. That's when they need love the most. Mother and son fell silent, gazing at the starry night. It was one of those perfect moments that stay engraved in memory forever. Mum, Andrew said finally, I love you. I love you too, my son, she replied. I've always loved you, and I always will. In Andrew's first full year back in Pine Creek, many things changed in the town. The technical school he had proposed became a reality, in partnership with the state government. Several young people from the region now had access to vocational education without having to leave home. The local economic development program also thrived. More than 20 small businesses received consulting and support, generating dozens of new jobs. Andrew became a respected and beloved figure in the community, not because of the money he had, but because of how he used his resources and knowledge to help others. His company in New York City continued to grow, now with a more decentralized management structure that worked very well. Margaret became something of a matriarch of the extended family, always giving wise advice and mediating conflicts. Her health was stable, controlled with medication, and lots of family love. David and Jennifer had another child, a girl named Margaret, in honor of her grandmother. Andrew became a present and caring uncle, always available to help with the children. Sarah met a widower from the neighboring town, a retired teacher named George, and for the first time in years, she was dating seriously. Everyone in the family liked him and was rooting for them to get married soon. One Sunday morning, exactly 2 years after his arrival in Pine Creek, Andrew woke up to the sound of lively voices in the backyard. It was his nephews and nieces playing while the adults prepared a family lunch. He got up, threw on some simple clothes, and went to the kitchen, where he found Margaret making coffee. "Good morning, Mom," he said, kissing her cheek. "Good morning, son," she replied, smiling. "Did you sleep well?" "Perfectly," Andrew replied. "And you?" "Like an angel," she said. "I don't feel those chest pains anymore that used to wake me up at dawn." "That's good," Andrew said, genuinely relieved. During breakfast, the whole family gathered at the table. It was a Sunday tradition Andrew had helped create. Everyone woke up at the main house to have breakfast together. "Uncle Andrew," Ryan said, "can you take us fishing today?" "I sure can," Andrew replied. "But only if you promise me you'll be patient, because I'm a little rusty at fishing." The kids laughed and promised to teach their uncle everything they knew. Later, when they were all at the small pond on the outskirts of town, Andrew realized something surprising. He was genuinely happy. It wasn't the temporary satisfaction he felt when closing a big deal or when he was recognized with a business award. It was a deep, serene happiness that came from within. "What are you thinking about?" David asked, noticing his brother's contemplative expression. "About how I almost lost all of this," Andrew replied. "But you didn't lose it," David said. "And that's what matters." "That's true," Andrew agreed. "Sometimes you need to leave to appreciate what you have, but not everyone has the humility to come back," David observed. "Lucky for me, I did," Andrew said. At that moment, Ryan shouted with excitement because he had hooked a fish. Everyone ran over to help him, and the afternoon filled with laughter, play, and stories. When they returned home at the end of the day, Andrew looked back and saw the small town where he had chosen to rebuild his life. Pine Creek didn't offer the luxuries and comforts of New York City, but it offered something far more valuable, a meaningful life. The following week, Andrew received an unexpected invitation. A national business magazine wanted to do a feature on entrepreneurs who had radically changed their lifestyle. "Mr. Sterling," the journalist said during the interview, "don't you feel like you're wasting your potential living in such a small town?" "On the contrary," Andrew replied, "I think I'm fulfilling my potential for the first time." "How so?" "In New York City, I was just another rich businessman," Andrew explained. "Here I can make a real difference in people's lives. I can use my resources and knowledge to transform an entire community." "But don't you miss the hustle and bustle of the metropolis?" "I miss some conveniences," Andrew admitted, "but I don't miss the stress, the relentless competition, the superficiality of relationships." "And financially? Did this change affect your business?" "Actually, it improved," Andrew smiled. "With fewer distractions and more focus, I was able to make better decisions. My company is more profitable than ever." What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs considering similar changes? Andrew thought carefully before answering. "That success without family and community is empty," he said, "and that sometimes we need the courage to redefine what being successful in life means." When the article was published, it caused quite a stir. Andrew received hundreds of messages from entrepreneurs going through similar dilemmas. Some, inspired by his story, made similar decisions. Others just started rethinking their life priorities. "You're becoming an influencer," Sarah joked. "God forbid," Andrew laughed. "I only wanted to tell my story. If it helps a few people rethink their choices, it was worth it." 3 years had passed since Andrew returned to Pine Creek. The town had changed significantly. More job opportunities, young people staying instead of moving away, a more diverse and prosperous local economy. Andrew had become not just a resident, but a respected community leader. He actively participated in local decisions, supported social projects, and continued mentoring small business owners. His company in New York City was expanding to other countries, but he had managed to keep his base in Pine Creek, proving that it was possible to run a global business from anywhere in the world. Margaret, now 75, was in stable health and remained active in family and community life. She had become a sort of informal advisor to the town, always sought out by people who needed a wise word. One autumn afternoon, Andrew was in his office when he received an unexpected call. "Mr. Sterling," said the voice on the other end of the line, "this is Roberto Santos from the Sustainable Development Foundation." "Yes," Andrew replied. "We would like to invite you to be our national ambassador for the Interior Entrepreneurs Program," Roberto explained. "It's an initiative to encourage other entrepreneurs to invest in the development of small towns." "Interesting," Andrew said. "Tell me more about the program." During the conversation, Andrew learned that his story had inspired the creation of a national program that connected urban entrepreneurs with rural communities in need of economic development. "It would be an honor to participate," Andrew accepted. "But on one condition. I cannot be away from Pine Creek for long periods. My family is here." "Of course," Roberto agreed. "Actually, that's one of the things we admire most about your case. You proved that it's possible to be globally relevant and locally committed." In the following months, Andrew began working with the national program, helping other entrepreneurs replicate models similar to what he had developed in Pine Creek. It was work that gave him even more purpose, expanding his impact beyond his own community. One evening, while having dinner with the family, Ryan, now 11 years old, asked a question that surprised everyone. "Uncle Andrew, when I grow up, can I work with you?" "Of course you can," Andrew replied. "But what would you like to do?" "I want to help other cities like you do," Ryan said seriously. "I want to be like you." Andrew was moved by his nephew's words. "Ryan, you can be much better than me," he said, "because you're learning early on that real success is helping others." "Is that what you did?" asked Ethan, the younger brother. "That's what I learned to do," Andrew corrected. "It took me a long time to understand that." "Why did it take so long?" Ryan wanted to know. "Because when we're young, sometimes we think we know everything," Andrew explained. "And it takes time to discover that the most important things in life aren't learned from books. They are learned by living among good people." The children seemed satisfied with the explanation and went back to focusing on their food. Later, when they were alone, Margaret commented, "Did you notice what happened?" "What, Mum?" "You became a role model for these children," she said proudly. "They want to be like their uncle." "I hope they become much better," Andrew said. "They will," Margaret said with certainty, "because they will grow up seeing that success and kindness can go hand in hand." In Andrew's 5th year in Pine Creek, the town organized a special celebration in his honor. It was the Citizen Entrepreneur Day, a celebration to recognize his contribution to local development. Andrew was embarrassed by the tribute, but he accepted to participate because he knew it was important to the community. "Andrew," said the mayor during the ceremony, "you transformed our city not only with investments, but with your example. You showed that it is possible to be successful without forgetting where you came from." The speech moved Andrew, but what touched him most was seeing his entire family in the front row, applauding proudly. When it was his turn to speak, Andrew stepped onto the makeshift platform in the central square and looked at the audience. They were familiar faces, neighbors, friends, people who were part of his daily life. "I'm the one who should be thanking you," he began. "When I came back here 5 years ago, I was lost. Rich but lost. You welcomed me, accepted me back, gave me the opportunity to be part of this community again." He paused for a moment, emotional. "I learned that success is not measured by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. Not by what you achieve alone, but by what you build together with others. The audience applauded, and Andrew saw tears in the eyes of many people. "Pine Creek is not just the town where I was born," he continued. "It's the place where I learned to really live. It's where I discovered that family is everything. It's where I found my purpose." When he stepped down from the platform, he was surrounded by people who wanted to greet him and thank him. But waiting for him at the end of the crowd was Margaret, in her wheelchair, with a radiant smile. "Son, I'm so proud of you," she said as he approached. "Proud of what, Mom?" "Because you've become exactly the man I dreamed you would be when you were little," she replied. "What do you mean?" "Strong but gentle, intelligent but humble, successful but generous," Margaret explained. "And above all, a man who knows how to love." Andrew knelt beside his mother's wheelchair and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for never giving up on me," he said. "Thank you for coming back," she replied. That night, after the party ended and everyone went home, Andrew walked alone through the streets of Pine Creek. The town was silent, lit only by the full moon. He stopped in front of the house where he grew up, now renovated and expanded, but still recognizable as his childhood home. 5 years ago, when he had arrived there for the first time after so long away, he was a divided man, professionally successful, but a failure as a son and brother. Today, he was a whole man. He had managed to reconcile professional success with personal happiness, ambition with love, individual achievements with collective contribution. It hadn't been easy. He had to relearn how to be a son, brother, uncle. He had to rediscover how to live in community. He had to find new models of business leadership, but each challenge overcome had made him a better person. When he entered the house, he found a note from Margaret on the table. "Son, thank you for giving me the opportunity to see you become the extraordinary man I always knew you were. You are my greatest pride and my greatest joy. With love, Mom." Andrew put the note in his pocket, knowing he would carry it forever as a reminder of what truly mattered in life. The next morning he woke up with a deep sense of peace. He opened the bedroom window and saw the sun rising over Pine Creek. It was a new day, full of possibilities. He had work meetings scheduled, projects to develop, a company to manage, but he also had a family lunch, an afternoon playing with his nephews and nieces, a conversation with his mother at the end of the day. It was the life he had chosen, not perfect, but complete. Not without challenges, but full of meaning. Not without responsibilities, but balanced with love. As he got ready to start another day, Andrew smiled as he remembered the man he was 5 years ago. That rich and lonely Andrew seemed almost like a stranger now. Had he lost something in the transformation? Perhaps the illusion that financial success was synonymous with personal fulfillment. Perhaps the belief that total independence was more important than loving interdependence. But he had gained much more than he had lost. He had gained a family. He had gained a purpose. He had gained himself. When he came down to have coffee with everyone, he found the house in motion. Margaret was in the kitchen instructing Sarah about lunch. David was playing with the children in the living room. Jennifer was organizing the washed clothes. It was the organized chaos of a large, united family. It was noisy, sometimes confusing, always unpredictable. It was perfect. "Good morning, everyone," Andrew said, and was greeted with a chorus of affectionate good mornings. Margaret approached and kissed her son on the cheek. "How did you sleep?" she asked. "Like a child," Andrew replied. "And you?" "I dreamed about your father," she said, surprising him. "What did you dream?" "I dreamed he was proud to see how you've turned out," Margaret explained. "He said the family is complete again." Andrew was moved. Margaret rarely spoke about the husband she had lost so early. "Do you think he would really be proud?" Andrew asked. "I'm sure," Margaret said with conviction. "He always wanted his children to be good men, and you've proven you are." During breakfast, Ryan announced that he had gotten the first perfect score in math of his school life. "Congratulations," Andrew said, giving his nephew a hug. "What motivated you to study so much?" "I want to be as smart as you so I can help people," Ryan answered simply. "Ryan, you are already smart," Andrew said, "and you already help people in your own way." "How?" "By being a good, obedient, affectionate boy," Andrew explained. "That already makes a big difference in the lives of those around you." The boy smiled, satisfied with the explanation. Later, when Andrew was working in his office, he received a call that would again change the course of his life. "Mr. Sterling," said the voice on the other end of the line, "this is Dr. Alison Collins from the Global Cooperation League." "Of course," Andrew replied, intrigued. "We would like to invite you to be the ambassador for the Sustainable Development in Small Communities program, Doctor." Alison explained. "It's a global initiative to replicate success stories like yours." Andrew was surprised by the invitation, but also excited about the possibility of expanding his impact even further. "What kind of work would it be?" he asked. "Consulting for governments and non-governmental organizations, participation in international conferences, development of methodologies for other countries," Dr. Allison detailed. It was an extraordinary opportunity, but Andrew knew he needed to think carefully before accepting. "Can I have a few days to think?" he asked. "Of course," Dr. Allison agreed. "It's an important decision." After hanging up the phone, Andrew spent a long time thinking. It was a unique chance to take his ideas to the whole world, to influence public policies on a global scale. But it would also mean frequent international travel, less time with family, a more complex life once again. That night, during dinner, he shared the dilemma with everyone. "Andrew, this is an incredible opportunity," Sarah said. "You can help thousands of people. But you'll also be traveling a lot," David pondered, "and you just found the balance you wanted." "What is your heart saying?" Margaret asked. "It's divided," Andrew admitted. "Part of me wants to accept because it's a chance to make even more of a difference in the world. Another part is afraid of losing what we built here." "What if you could do both?" Jennifer suggested. "What do you mean?" "Accept the job, but with conditions," she explained. "Make it clear that your base is here, that you can travel but not move." "I think it's worth a try," David agreed. "If they really want your work, they'll accept your conditions." "And we'll support any decision you make," Sarah added. Andrew looked around the table, seeing the faces of the people he loved most in the world. "Are you sure you wouldn't mind the travel?" he asked. "We've learned that you always come back," Margaret said with a smile. "And now we know your home is here with us." The next morning, Andrew called the Global Cooperation League back. "Dr. Collins," he said, "I accept the offer, but with some conditions." "What conditions?" "First, my operational base needs to be here in Pine Creek," Andrew explained. "Second, I can't travel more than 2 weeks per month. Third, my entire family needs to be included in invitations to special events." Dr. Collins was silent for a few seconds. "Mr. Sterling," she said finally, "these conditions only confirm that we made the right choice. A man who puts family first is exactly the kind of leader we want." And so a new phase began in Andrew's life. In the following years, he traveled to dozens of countries, helping to develop programs similar to the one he had created in Pine Creek, always returning home, always keeping his family as a priority, always remembering where his most important values came from. Pine Creek became a kind of global laboratory for sustainable development of small communities. Researchers, students, and public managers came from all over the world to understand how such a small town had managed to transform itself so much. Andrew was proud of these visitors, but what made him happiest was seeing that the transformation had been collective. It wasn't just his story, it was the story of an entire community that had believed in the possibility of change. Margaret, now 78 years old, still actively participated in family and community life. Her health was stable, managed with medication and a lot of love from the family. One evening, when Andrew was returning from another international trip, he found his mother waiting for him on the porch, as she always did. "How was the trip, son?" she asked. "Productive," Andrew replied, sitting down next to her. "We managed to get similar programs to ours approved for 3 countries in Africa." "How wonderful," Margaret said, proud. "You're helping the whole world now." "I'm trying," Andrew said humbly. "But you're not forgetting to help those close to you, are you?" she asked with a mischievous smile. "Never again," Andrew assured her. "I learned my lesson." "What lesson?" "That there's no point in wanting to save the world if you can't take care of your own family," Andrew said. "Wise," Margaret approved. "Very wise." They sat in silence for a few minutes, gazing at the stars. It was a ritual they had developed. Whenever Andrew returned from a trip, They spent a few minutes together on the porch, just enjoying each other's company. "Mom," Andrew said finally, "can I ask you a question?" "Always." "Have you ever regretted anything in your life?" Margaret thought for a moment. "I regret letting pride speak louder than love in that fight we had," she said. "If I had swallowed my pride and called you in those first few months, maybe you would have come back sooner. Or maybe I wouldn't have been ready to come back," Andrew mused. "Maybe I needed all those years to mature." "Maybe," Margaret agreed. "Sometimes things happen at the right time, even when it doesn't seem like it." "And you?" she asked. "Do you regret anything?" "I regret taking so long to realize what really mattered," Andrew replied. "But I don't regret the path I took, because it brought me here." "Where?" "To this moment," Andrew said, looking around. "Here, talking with you, knowing that my family is sleeping safe and happy, knowing that I found my place in the world." Margaret smiled, satisfied with her son's response. "Then it was worth it," she said. "It was very much worth it," Andrew agreed. 8 years had passed since Andrew had returned to Pine Creek. The town was now internationally known as an example of sustainable development. Andrew had become a global reference in business leadership with social responsibility. But what made him most proud was not the international awards he had received, nor the media recognition, nor the growth of his company. What made him most proud was seeing Ryan and Ethan growing up as conscious and responsible young men, seeing Margaret aging with dignity and surrounded by love, seeing David and Sarah Sterling happy and fulfilled, seeing his community prosperous and united. One spring morning, Andrew woke up with a different feeling. He couldn't exactly define what it was, but he felt that something special was going to happen that day. During breakfast, Ryan, who was now 16, made an announcement that moved the whole family. "Everyone, I've decided what I want to study in college," he said. "What?" Andrew asked. "Business administration with a focus on community development," Ryan replied. "I want to work with Uncle Andrew when I graduate." "Ryan, are you sure about this?" David asked. "It's an important decision." "I'm sure, Dad," Ryan said with conviction. "I grew up watching Uncle help people and transform our town. I want to do the same thing in other places." Andrew was deeply moved by his nephew's words. "Ryan, it would be an honor to have you as a partner," he said. "But you need to know it's not easy work. It requires a lot of studying, a lot of effort, a lot of patience." "I know," Ryan replied, "and I'm willing to do all of that." "Then you can count on me to help you," Andrew promised. Ethan, who was now 14, also made his declaration. "I want to study engineering to build things that help people," he said. "What kind of things?" Jennifer asked. "I don't know yet," Ethan admitted, "but I want to build useful things, not just pretty ones." Andrew smiled, hearing his nephew's plans. It was as if he were seeing the next generation of the family embracing the values he had rediscovered. "You know you make me very proud, right?" he said. "Why?" Ryan asked. "Because you're choosing paths that will let you make a difference in the world," Andrew explained. "And you're doing it not out of obligation, but out of conviction." "You taught us that," Ethan said simply. "No," Andrew corrected. "Your parents taught you. I just confirmed that you had learned it well." That afternoon, Andrew was working in his office when Sarah Sterling knocked on the door. "Andrew, can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course," he replied, motioning for her to sit. "It's about Mom," Sarah said, and the worried tone in her voice made Andrew alert. "What about Mom?" "She's been more tired lately," Sarah explained. "And yesterday, she said something strange to me." "What?" "She said she feels she has already fulfilled her mission in this life," Sarah reported. "That she can now rest in peace." Andrew felt a chill in his stomach. "Do you think she's sick?" he asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Her tests are normal, within the expected range for her age. But it seems like she's saying goodbye." "Saying goodbye how?" "She's been talking a lot about the past, about Dad, about when we were kids," Sarah explained. "And she's been giving advice to everyone, as if she were passing on her last teachings." Andrew grew worried. Margaret really had seemed more contemplative lately, more focused on memories and reflections. "Did you talk to her about it?" he asked. "I tried, but she changes the subject," Sarah said. "She says it's nothing, that she's just a little more tired." "We're taking her to the doctor," Andrew decided. "She won't want to go," Sarah warned. "Then I'll talk to her," Andrew said. That night, Andrew found Margaret in her favorite spot, the front porch, watching the stars. "Mom, can I join you?" he asked. "Of course, son," she replied, as she always did. Andrew sat beside her, and they stayed in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "Mom," he said finally, "Sarah told me you've been feeling more tired." "A little," Margaret admitted. "How about we schedule a doctor's appointment just to check if everything's okay?" Margaret looked at him with a soft smile. "Andrew, I'm 81 years old," she said. "I've already lived much longer than I expected when I was young." "That doesn't mean you should stop taking care of your health," Andrew insisted. "I'm not neglecting it," she clarified. "It's just that there comes a time in life when you understand some things are beyond our control." "What do you mean?" "Son, I raised the three of you, watched you become good men and women," Margaret said. "I watched you come home, saw the family come together again. I watched my grandchildren grow into good people. I saw our town thrive. What more could I want?" "We want you to stay with us as long as possible," Andrew said, his voice choked. "And I will stay," Margaret promised, "as long as God wills and as long as you need me." "We'll always need you," Andrew said. "That's not true," Margaret said gently. "You've already learned everything I had to teach. Now you're capable of walking on your own." "Mum, don't talk like that," Andrew begged. "Why can't I talk about life?" she asked. "Life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's part of it." "Because I get scared," Andrew confessed. "Scared of what?" "Of losing you again," he said. "I stayed away for so long, I don't want to lose you anymore." Margaret took her son's hand. "Son, you never lost me," she said. "Even when you were far away, you were still my son, and I was still your mother. And that will never change, no matter what happens." "I know that in my head," Andrew said. "But in my heart, I'm still afraid." "That's natural," Margaret said. "But love doesn't die. Love continues, even when people leave." They held each other for a long time, each lost in their own thoughts. "Mom," Andrew said finally, "promise me that if you're not feeling well, you'll tell me." "I promise," she said, "and promise you'll go to the doctor if I ask." "I promise," she repeated. "Thank you," Andrew said, feeling a little more at ease. "Son, can I ask you something?" Margaret said. "Anything. When my time comes to leave, don't be angry with God, or with me, or with life," she asked. "Mom." "Let me finish," she interrupted. "When that moment comes, I want you to remember all the good we've shared. I want you to remember that we reconciled, that we had these wonderful years together. I want you to remember that you made me very happy by coming home." Andrew was crying now, unable to control the tears. "You made me happy too, Mum," he said. "Happier than I ever thought possible." "Then everything is fine," she said, wiping her son's tears. "We don't need anything else." They stayed embraced for a few more minutes, enjoying each other's presence, savoring that moment of intimacy and love. When they finally parted, Margaret said, "Now let's go inside. It's getting cold, and you have work early tomorrow." "Okay, Mom," Andrew agreed. But before going in, he stopped and looked back, etching into his memory the image of his mother walking slowly toward the house, leaning on her cane, but still dignified and strong. It was a sight he knew he would carry in his heart forever. In the following days, Andrew became more attentive to his mother, watching for any change in her behavior or mood. Margaret, in turn, seemed to be savoring each moment more intensely, as if she were enjoying life in a special way. One morning, she woke up more cheerful than usual and asked the whole family to gather for Sunday lunch. "Let's have a party," she announced. "I want to see everyone together, chatting, laughing, having a good time." "What's the party for, Grandma?" Ryan asked. "A party for life," Margaret replied. "A party for being here, together, healthy, happy." The family organized a special lunch. Jennifer prepared Margaret's favorite dishes. Andrew ordered a cake from the best bakery in town. David bought sodas and juices for everyone. During lunch, Margaret was radiant. She told old stories, laughed at the children's jokes, gave affectionate advice to her adult children. "Do you know what I'm most proud of in life?" she said at one point. "What, Mom?" Sarah asked. "To see that I raised 3 children who became good people," Margaret said, "and that those 3 children are also raising other good human beings." "That was your doing, Mom," David said. "It was our doing," she corrected, "all of us together." Andrew watched his mother speak and noticed a special serenity in her gestures, as if she were at peace with herself and with life. After lunch, when everyone was resting in the living room, Margaret asked to speak with each child individually. She started with Sarah. "My daughter," she said when they were alone, "you sacrificed a lot to take care of me all these years." "It wasn't a sacrifice, Mom," Sarah protested. "It was love." "I know," Margaret said, "but now it's time for you to live for yourself. Marry George, be happy, build your own family." "But who will take care of you?" "I have 2 sons perfectly capable of helping me," Margaret said, "and you can still be close. You just don't have to give up your personal life anymore." "Mom." "It's an order," Margaret said, but with a smile. "I want to see you happy." Then it was David's turn. "My son," she said, "you have always been my pillar. When Andrew left, you were the one who took care of everything." "I did what any son would do," David said. "That's not true," Margaret said. "Many sons would have left too. You stayed, took on responsibilities, took care of the family." "And I don't regret it," David said. "I know," she smiled, "but I want you to know that I am very proud of you. You are an upright man, hard-working, a wonderful father." "Thank you, Mom." "Keep being an example for your children," she asked. "They need a father like you." Lastly, she called Andrew. "My son," she began, "you gave me the greatest gift of my life." "What gift, Mom?" "You came back," she said simply. "After so much time, after so much hurt, you swallowed your pride and came home." "It wasn't just pride," Andrew said. "It was fear too. Fear that it might be too late." "It's never too late for love," Margaret said. "That's the most important lesson I can leave you." "Leave?" Andrew was alarmed. "Mom, you're talking as if—" "As if I were giving advice to my son," she interrupted. "That's what I've been doing for 41 years, ever since you were born." Andrew felt calmer with the explanation, but he still felt there was something special about that conversation. "Andrew," Margaret continued, "I want you to promise me something. Anything you want. Promise me you'll continue being this wonderful person you've become," she asked. "That you won't forget that family is everything. That you'll keep helping people but without forgetting who you really are." "I promise, Mom," Andrew said solemnly. "And promise me you'll take care of your siblings." She added, "That you won't let the family split apart again." "I promise," Andrew repeated. "Then everything's fine," she said, kissing her son on the forehead. "I'm at peace." That night, the whole family had dinner together once more. It was a joyful meal full of lively conversation and laughter. Margaret took part in everything, as if she was soaking up every moment, every word, every smile. When they went to bed, she gave each family member an especially tender hug. "Good night, my loves," she said. "Sleep well." The next morning, when Sarah went to wake Margaret for breakfast, she found her sleeping peacefully in bed with a serene smile on her face. Margaret had passed away in her sleep, without pain, without suffering, surrounded by her family's love. The wake was simple, just as she would have wanted. The house was filled with people who came to pay their last respects to the matriarch of the Sterling family, to the woman who had raised her children with so much love and who had become a beloved figure throughout Pine Creek. Andrew cried a lot in the first few days, but gradually he began to understand that his mother had left exactly as she had lived, at the right time, in the right way, leaving a legacy of love and wisdom. During the funeral, he gave a speech that moved everyone present. "My mother taught me that love doesn't have an expiration date. he said. "That family is the most precious treasure a person can have. That success without kindness is worthless, and that it's never too late to come home." He paused, emotional, before continuing. "She forgave me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. She welcomed me when I didn't deserve a welcome. She loved me when I didn't know how to return that love. And she waited for me for 11 years, never losing hope that I would come back. So the greatest gift I can give to her memory is to keep living by the values she taught me. To be a good son, a good brother, a good uncle, a good citizen. To use my resources and knowledge to help others. And never again forget where I came from and who the people are that truly matter." After the funeral, the family gathered at home to process the loss. It was strange to be in that space without Margaret's presence, but at the same time there was a feeling that she was still there somehow. "She was at peace," Sarah said. "Did you see how serene she was yesterday?" "I did," David agreed. "It seemed like she was saying goodbye to everyone and everything." "I think she knew," Andrew said. "Mothers always know these things." "And she wanted us to remember her happy," Sarah added. "Not crying." "We'll cry a little," Andrew said honestly. "That's natural, but then we'll celebrate her life and everything she taught us." In the months that followed, the family went through a period of adjustment. The house grew quieter, meals had one fewer participant, family decisions had to be made without Margaret's wisdom, but gradually, everyone found ways to honor her memory. Sarah married George, fulfilling her mother's wish to see her happy. David continued being the exemplary father and present brother he had always been. Andrew kept his promise to never drift away from his family again. Ryan and Ethan grew up hearing stories about the grandmother who had loved them so much, absorbing her values and wisdom. 1 year after Margaret's passing, the family organized a mass in her memory. The church was packed, proof of how many lives she had touched during her 81 years. After the mass, Andrew visited his mother's grave. He brought flowers, daisies, her favorites, and stood in silence for a few minutes, remembering all the conversations they had had, all the lessons she had shared. "Mom," he finally said, "I want you to know that I'm keeping every promise I made." The family remains united. I keep helping people, and I'll never forget who I truly am. A gentle breeze stirred the flowers, and Andrew felt as if it were a response from her, a confirmation that she was proud and at peace. When he got home that day, he found Ryan studying in his room, preparing for the Business Administration College entrance exam. The young man had kept his determination to follow in his uncle's footsteps, to use knowledge to help others. "How are the studies going?" Andrew asked. "Good," Ryan replied. "I'm excited to start college." "And I'm excited to have you as a partner," Andrew said. "But remember, you don't have to be like me. You can be better." "I'll try," Ryan smiled. "Your grandmother would be proud of you," Andrew said. "Do you really think so?" "I'm sure," Andrew confirmed. "She always said you would be a special man." Ryan was moved by his uncle's words. "Uncle Andrew," he said, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "Sometimes I feel like Grandma is still here, guiding me," Ryan confessed. "Is that weird?" "It's not weird at all," Andrew said. "I feel it too. I think the love of the people we love never fully dies." "It's a good feeling," Ryan said. "It really is," Andrew agreed. That night, Andrew went out for his usual evening walk through the streets of Pine Creek. It was a ritual he had developed since his mother's death, a time to reflect on the day and plan for the future. The town was quiet, lit by streetlights and the full moon. It was a perfect night to think about life and the choices he had made. 10 years had passed since he came back home. He had lost his mother but gained an even closer family. He had lost the illusion that material success was enough for happiness, but gained the certainty that love and purpose were far more valuable. His company continued to thrive. His international work was having an impact in dozens of countries. Pine Creek had become a worldwide example of sustainable development, but what he was most proud of was the family he had rebuilt, the values he had rediscovered, the person he had become. When he got back home, he stopped on the porch where he used to talk with Margaret. Her chair was still there, as if waiting for her, Andrew sat in his own chair and looked at the empty chair beside him. "Mom," he said softly, "thank you for everything. Thank you for raising me with love. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for showing me the way back home." The night wind rustled the curtains at the window, and Andrew smiled, feeling as if his mother were there, approving his words. "I promise I'll keep honoring your memory," he added, "and I promise I'll never forget the lessons I learned from you." Then he stood up, took one last look at the empty chair, and went inside. It was time to rest. Tomorrow would be another day, full of opportunities to make a difference in the world, to take care of his family, to live according to the values Margaret had taught him. It was a good life, a life with purpose, a life surrounded by love. It was all he needed. 5 years had passed since Margaret's departure. Andrew had become an even greater reference on the international stage, but his base remained Pine Creek, and his priority remained family. Ryan had graduated in business administration and had been working beside his uncle for 2 years. The young man showed impressive maturity and a genuine passion for helping underprivileged communities. He had already led projects in 3 different states, always with exceptional results. Ethan had chosen civil engineering as planned, but specialized in sustainable construction. He was in his 3rd year of university and already interning on the affordable housing projects Andrew funded. One December morning, while Andrew was working in his office, Ryan knocked on the door with a serious expression. "Uncle, I need to talk to you," he said. "Of course, Ryan," Andrew replied, noticing his nephew's formal tone. "Have a seat." "It's about my professional future," Ryan began. "I have a proposal for you." Andrew grew curious. Ryan had always been direct but never so solemn. "What proposal?" "I want to start my own organization," Ryan said. "A non-profit focused specifically on young entrepreneurs from rural areas." Andrew was surprised, but also proud of his nephew's initiative. "That's an interesting idea," he said. "Tell me more." "The idea is to create a national support network for young people who want to start businesses in small towns but don't have access to capital or knowledge," Ryan explained. "It would be like a younger version of what you do, but focused on the next generation." "And how would it work?" "Online courses, remote mentoring, microcredit for initial projects, and most importantly, a mutual support network among the young participants," Ryan detailed. "Each city that joins the program commits to helping other cities." Andrew was impressed by his nephew's level of planning. "Have you thought about the initial funding?" he asked. "Actually," Ryan said, a little embarrassed, "I was hoping you'd be my first investor." Andrew smiled. It was exactly the kind of project he loved to support. "Ryan, not only will I be your first investor, but I'll also be your first official mentor," he promised. The young man's eyes lit up with emotion. "Really, Uncle?" "Really," Andrew confirmed, "but with one condition." "What?" "That you keep the non-profit headquarters here in Pine Creek," Andrew said, "to show that it's possible to do great things starting from small places." "That was exactly what I was going to propose," Ryan smiled. Over the following weeks, uncle and nephew worked together on developing the project. Andrew was impressed by Ryan's vision. He had carefully observed his uncle's work for years and was now proposing a natural evolution of those ideas. The non-profit was named Roots of the Future, and its slogan was "Planting Dreams in Fertile Soil." The proposal was simple: identify talented young people in small towns and give them the tools needed to start businesses without having to leave their communities. David was proud of his son when he heard about the project. "Ryan is following in your footsteps, Andrew," he said, "but in a way that's all his own." "That's exactly how it should be," Andrew replied. "Each generation needs to find its own way to make a difference." Ethan also wanted to be part of his brother's project, offering his engineering knowledge to help young people interested in construction and infrastructure. "Can I be the non-profit's technical consultant?" he asked. "Of course you can," Ryan replied. "Actually, I was counting on it." The first cohort of Roots of the Future had 50 young people from 20 different towns. The results exceeded all expectations. In 6 months, 15 new businesses had been created, generating local jobs and boosting regional economies. Andrew watched his nephew's success with deep satisfaction. It was as if he was seeing Margaret's legacy perpetuated through the generations. One afternoon, while visiting one of the non-profit-supported projects in a neighboring town, Ryan made an observation that touched Andrew's heart. "Uncle, do you know what motivates me most in this work?" he said. "What?" "Imagining how proud Grandma Margaret would be to see that her teachings are helping young people all across the country," Ryan replied. Andrew felt his eyes fill with tears. "She would be proud indeed," he agreed, "and she would be especially proud of the man you've become." "I learned from the best," Ryan said modestly. "You learned from her," Andrew corrected. "I just passed on what she taught me." At that moment, Andrew realized the cycle was completing itself. The values Margaret had planted in him were now being passed on to a new generation who would take them even further. 2 years later, Roots of the Future had become one of the most respected NGOs in the country. Ryan was being invited to speak at universities and international events, always carrying the message that it is possible to change the world from anywhere, no matter how small. Ethan had graduated and opened his own sustainable construction company, specializing in projects for low-income communities. His projects were innovative both technically and socially, always involving the local community in the building process. Sarah had become one of the most beloved teachers at the technical school Andrew had created, teaching sewing and dressmaking to young people who wanted to start businesses in the garment industry. David continued working on the farm, but now as a partner with the owner in a sustainable agriculture project that had become a model for other regions. The family was prosperous, united, and each member was contributing to the development of the community in their own way. One Christmas night, exactly 15 years after Andrew's return to Pine Creek, the entire extended family gathered for the traditional dinner. In addition to the immediate family members, several young people who had benefited from the family's projects were present, having become part of the extended family. During the dinner, Andrew was asked to make a toast. 15 years ago, he began, I arrived here as a lost man, full of money but empty of love. Today I look around this table and see the true meaning of wealth. He paused, emotional, looking at each face around the table. I see Ryan and Ethan, who took the family values and took them to heights I never imagined. I see David and Sarah, who never gave up on the family even in the toughest times. I see Jennifer and George, who have become an essential part of this family. And above all, he continued, looking at the empty chair where Margaret used to sit, I feel the presence of the woman who taught us that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Mum, wherever you are, know that your teachings continue to change lives. Everyone toasted in memory of Margaret, and Andrew felt a deep peace in his heart. After dinner, when the guests had left and the family was relaxing in the living room, Ryan made an announcement that surprised everyone. Everyone, I have important news, he said. What news? David asked. Roots of the Future has been selected by the Global Cooperation League to be replicated in countries in Africa and Latin America, Ryan announced. Everyone was moved by the news. Ryan, what an incredible achievement, Andrew said, hugging his nephew. And there's more, Ryan continued. They want me to assemble an international team and spend 6 months a year traveling to implement the project. Andrew felt a twinge of concern. Would it be like reliving his own story from decades ago? And do you want to accept? He asked carefully. I do, Ryan replied, but only if you all agree, and only with the absolute guarantee that my base will remain here. Explain better, David asked. I would travel 6 months a year, but I would always come back home, Ryan explained. Pine Creek would continue to be the international headquarters of the project, and I would never lose contact with the family. Andrew smiled, realizing that Ryan had learned the lesson that he himself had taken so long to understand. Ryan, he said, you have our full support, because you're doing this the right way, taking our community to the world, not abandoning our community for the world. Exactly, Ryan confirmed. I learned from your mistakes and successes, Uncle. And we'll always be here when you come back, Sarah added. Always, David confirmed. Ethan also gave his support, and I'll take care of the technical side of the local projects while you're traveling. In the following months, Ryan prepared for his new international mission. Unlike what Andrew had done decades ago, Ryan organized everything to keep family bonds strong even during his travels. He created a family group on WhatsApp for daily chats, scheduled weekly video calls, and planned his trips so that he would never be away from home for more than 6 consecutive weeks. "I learned that success without family is worthless," he told Andrew before his first international trip. "You learned faster than I did," Andrew laughed. "I had a good teacher," Ryan replied. Over the next 3 years, Ryan traveled to dozens of countries, helping to implement projects similar to the one he had created in the United States. He always kept in close touch with his family and always returned home by the promised deadline. The impact of his work was extraordinary. Thousands of young people around the world were now starting businesses in their own communities, creating local jobs and strengthening regional economies. Andrew watched his nephew's success with growing pride. Ryan had achieved something he himself had never imagined, taking the values of a small town in the United States to the entire world. One evening, when Ryan was back from another international trip, he and Andrew were talking on the porch, the same spot where Andrew used to talk with Margaret. "Uncle," Ryan said, "can I tell you something?" "Always. Every time I'm in another country, far from here, I remember the story you told me about how lost you felt when you were away from your family," Ryan said, "and that gives me the strength to always come home." "It's good to know that my mistakes at least served as an example for you," Andrew smiled. "They weren't mistakes, Uncle," Ryan said. "It was a necessary path. If you hadn't left, you wouldn't have learned what you did. If you hadn't come back, you wouldn't have taught me what you did. And if you hadn't taught me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today." His nephew's wisdom impressed Andrew. "How did you get so wise so young?" he asked. "I learned from 3 generations," Ryan replied. "From grandmother Margaret, who taught me about unconditional love. From my father, who taught me about responsibility. And from you, who taught me that it's possible to balance success with family." "And what are you going to teach the next generation?" Andrew asked. "That no matter how far you go, there's always a way back home," Ryan answered. "And that home isn't a place. It's a group of people who love each other." Andrew was moved by his nephew's words. It was as if he were hearing a perfect summary of everything he had learned on his own journey. That night, when Ryan went to sleep, Andrew stayed a few more minutes alone on the porch. He looked at the chair where Margaret used to sit and smiled. "Mum," he said softly, "you can be proud. The family you raised is changing the world." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, and Andrew felt as if it were her answer, a confirmation that she was seeing it all and approving. 20 years had passed since his return to Pine Creek. The town was now internationally known. Ryan was impacting lives on 4 continents. Ethan had become one of the most respected architects in the country, and the family remained united and prosperous. But what gratified Andrew the most was knowing that it had all started with a simple decision: to go back home and ask for forgiveness. A decision that had changed not only his life, but the lives of thousands of people around the world. A decision that had honored Margaret's memory and perpetuated her teachings for future generations. A decision that had proven it's never too late to return to what really matters. The following Sunday, during the family lunch, Andrew looked around the table full of people he loved and felt a deep gratitude for every choice he had made to get there. "You know what?" he said suddenly. "What?" Ryan asked. "I think I finally understand the meaning of life," Andrew said. "And what is it?" Ethan wanted to know. "It's quite simple," Andrew replied, smiling. "It's to love and be loved. It's to make a difference in people's lives. It's to leave the world a little better than you found it. And most of all, it's to never forget that no matter how high you fly, your roots are always here, with those who truly know and love you." Everyone agreed in silence, each one reflecting on their own journeys and choices. "And you know the best part?" Andrew added. "What?" David asked. "It's that every one of you understood this much earlier than I did," he said. "And that means the next generation will be even better than ours." "Uncle," Ryan said, "can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "If you could go back in time and change something, would you?" Andrew thought carefully before answering. "No," he said finally. "Because every mistake I made, every success I had, every tear I shed brought me to this moment. And this moment is perfect." And it truly was. Sitting there at the table with his family, Andrew Sterling, the boy who had left Pine Creek in search of a better life, the young executive who had built a business empire, the lonely man who had discovered that success without love is empty, the regretful son who had come back home, the brother who had reconciled with his siblings, the uncle who had helped shape a new generation of leaders, was finally whole. His journey had begun with a fight and a departure. It was ending with love and unity. It had begun with pride and loneliness. It was ending with humility and family. It had begun with the pursuit of material wealth. It was ending with the discovery of true wealth, the love of the people who matter. And the most beautiful part was that it wasn't really ending. It was just the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Ryan and Ethan would continue the story, taking the family's values even further, impacting even more lives, building an even greater legacy. The legacy of Margaret Sterling, the matriarch who had raised her children with unconditional love and who had planted seeds that would keep sprouting for generations. The legacy of a family that had learned that no matter how far you go or how high you reach, what truly matters is having a place to come back to and people to love. The legacy of a small American town that had proven that great transformations can start anywhere, as long as there is love, determination, and unity. Andrew smiled, looking at each face around the table, capturing that perfect moment in his memory forever. It was Sunday. It was family, it was love, it was home, it was everything. End of story. And you, what did you think of this story of reconciliation and family love? Tell us if you've ever been in a similar situation where you had to swallow your pride to reconnect with someone you love. And if you liked the story, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting stories we've prepared for you. Your participation is very important to us.